Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of To Be Quite Honest, the podcast. My name is Ore. With me I have
Big Ben.
Big Ben, my co-host, and with us we have a very special. All our guests are special, but this one is very special. I say he's looking serious.
Yeah.
Is he looking serious?
In fact, if you're talking about let's just give you guys a clue. When you talk about real estate advisory in Lagos, Nigeria,
He's the one.
this is the man.
He's the one they're even thinking of. He's
This
the
is
owner
the
of the
man.
industry. Like
Are you a
nobody's
developer?
touching him.
Yeah, if you're a
Who sold this
developer,
to me?
you're thinking about what to develop, where
Well,
to develop.
in fact,
this is the
if you're
man.
looking for the roadmap on how to
You
start as a
understand?
developer,
Okay,
it's
I
him
can
you will
agree
come
with
to.
that.
You can agree. Let me tell you, why you're not even
This is a
denying.
podcast, so I mean,
Why you're not even denying? That means
You
your
know,
your leg is
just-
strong. You're not even shaking.
I'm super excited to be here. So yeah,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
We're more excited to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, you're a big voice in the real estate space.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes.
you are. I mean, you even have a big voice.
He has a
literally.
big voice, but he's a seasoned. It's
know?
like when you say industry leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
His
This
name they'll
is
be
one of
calling.
them.
Okay.
He
So
says,
I mean, we're not. This
No
is-
pressure.
Yeah, we're not excessively blowing your trumpet, but this is the word on the street.
he knows now.
basically, right?
He's not uncomfortable with the washing because he knows it's true.
Yeah,
As if I lie, he'll be like,
washing
hey,
is-
they should
is
not
the-
catch me
Is
outside.
the water clean?
If it's fake now, I say, hey, God, I hope they have not gone to oversell now.
No, but
Nothing we have said is a lie. So
no, but I mean, Mixta isn't a small organization. Did I
We're
just
not-
lie?
are we talking about me?
I didn't
We're
lie.
talking
So,
about our guests. No, that's not joint issues. No
And I
need
have
to.
a very strong team. No, I have people behind me who make my work look. I just wear a jacket, wear a nice shirt. Oh, this is ironed, and then I just come out and I look good. But I have a strong team behind me.
He's even humble. He's
So
giving
tell
credit
us,
to his team.
Tell us more about you.
Oh, yeah.
I believe we have some
Yes.
people who would just be meeting you for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. There's always that. So my name is Ayo Baru. I am Chief Operations Co-founder, North Coast Real Estate. We are a research-driven advisory firm. We're privately held, based out of Lagos, Nigeria, and we typically work with local and international clients. And we do, of course, advisory, like you rightly said, and then we do property management, brokerage, facilities management. We do a bit of industry engagement, conferencing, etc. And part of the central themes around what we do is introducing transparency into Nigeria's real estate market, so that hopefully we're able to attract as much money as everyone else is doing, fintech, etc. Yeah.
And I must say your team is doing a great job at that.
Thank you.
Because I mean, foreign investors, when coming into the country and trying to find who they want to invest with in the space,
Yes.
you're one of the people they will come to consult.
Yeah.
And
It is true.
yeah.
I've
So
looked at a few
for
of
that
their
transparency, I think you guys are helping to bring that into the market.
Yeah,
and
they're
so I'll
taking
say,
down the veil of
Exactly,
opaqueness
yeah,
around. Because
yeah.
everybody thinks real estate is just full of fraudsters.
Yes, I mean, part of how we make that work is research reports that we write, and we make sure they
Yeah.
are free. So we do that every 6 months, and now we've started adding a few, maybe every 3 months. So we do one maybe in the third month of the year, then one in the 6 months is a half-year report, and then we do something at the end of the year to just give an insight into what you can expect in the next year. And the purpose of that is to guide investment. So you might have land, you might have money to invest, you might want to build something. And the idea is when you go through that report, you should know what to build and what not to build. Because
Fair.
personally, I'm not a fan of people, losing revenue generating opportunities, yields that they could easily have gotten, and so on and so on and so forth. Yeah.
All right. So to get right into it, we're going to talk about today. We're talking about real estate in a recession.
Yes.
The opportunities, the challenges that come with it.
Both for developers and
Yeah, for
and
investors,
investors,
for everybody in this
literally for
space.
everyone in this space.
So my first question to you would be, to some people, right, since the campaigns started up until, elections up till now, many people would say the economy has sort of slowed down, right? First of all, are we in a recession?
I mean, so what you do in times like this when you ask the question is you go into a definition. Just go and
Just,
write the definition.
Let's go there.
Recessions are typically sustained
Okay.
and extended.
2 quarters or how many quarters?
Contractions in economic performance typified by 2 quarters,
quarters.
of contraction in GDP.
Okay.
Now, recessions aren't a big thing or a new thing in Nigeria. We've had about 8. We had one in 1967. We had one in 75. We had another one in 78. Then we had an interesting time, 81 to 83.
Yeah, of course.
Then the whole place was
Stable.
ambling on until we had one in 2016. And then we had one in 2020, which was pandemic induced.
Pandemic induced,
But then
but
we
also-
were almost there anyway. And of
Actually.
course, the most of the world went with us. So I wouldn't say that we're in a recession based on those parameters, but I do say, or I would say, investors are pretty much thinking through how they invest as we have gone, from the elections. Now, this is what we used at my company, Northcote. So when the current administration got into office, we're coming fresh off Jonathan's administration, and there was a lot of money to go around. So nobody needed advisory services.
Fair.
Why do you need advisory services when you have money to do whatever you want? You don't need it. You have money.
So
But
it's
as
people,
things,
it's people that don't have money that need advice.
no, let me, not exactly.
No, because there's opportunity cost now. You need to know where to put it.
It depends on how much money you have.
Fair.
Yeah, because if you have a lot of money and then you can go back to the source and keep getting more.
There's no need to.
Even if you go for advisory, you end up doing
What
What's
you
on
want.
your mind?
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
fair
Now,
enough.
fast forward 8 years, people almost don't take a step without speaking with their advisors. They don't, except it's a small amount of money, if it's a significant investment. Again, players in the investor market have started gravitating towards certain kinds of assets. By that I mean, in the good old days, in the past, residential was what you did.
They were still good.
Yeah. Now
Those days were still
you
good.
find people open to the idea of building a hospital now, building a warehouse now, building an inner city warehouse, building, a restaurant. You find people open to those ideas. In previous times,
Mostly
it was strictly residential,
So-
and even those that are doing it now, are still getting advice. Yes, please.
I want to ask, when you say, this is very interesting because I would say there's nothing purpose-built in Nigeria. Everything is residential as converted. And I tell you, when you go into Lekki,
Yeah.
the whole of Admiralty were houses.
Yes.
They've broken down the front window and made them
Converted
like
them,
show.
yeah.
So
Brilliant
now,
observation,
What
yes.
I want to find out is it it's like when I say the good old days were only residential, or is it that now there's now no space for residential again? We cannot convert anymore.
Yeah.
We are then forced
Yeah.
to build those things.
So you've pretty much brought in two main concepts into what you just said. First of all, we have the thing around gentrification, which is because of demand, it just makes more sense to change use. But then if I connect it to your question around if we were in a recession, all these conversions you saw got a boost in 2016 where we couldn't afford grade A offices that were charging us per square meter in dollars per annum. Anything from $350 to $1,000, to $900 per square. We couldn't afford that, so we were converting. And so you saw that in the city centers where a lot of people stay. So you would see that in Lekki, rightly, as you said. You would see that in Oniru, and you would also see that in Ikeja GRA. So yes, because of the demand for land and for assets in Lekki Phase 1, Oniru, and a few other areas that we track, it made more sense to convert those uses to those that had the highest demand, which is retail. So the question is, would you rather have a 5-bed duplex, as we call it, house in Lekki Phase 1? Or would you have
It's
6
complex.
shops?
It's a shopping complex.
And 6 shops will get you in half a year what, might take you 2 years to get for strictly residential. So it just made more sense. Once there's demand in an area and it's concentrated enough to a certain degree, you find that people, and this is of course understanding that the zoning can change in that you can change what a house is used for. Once zoning allows it, then yes, you can go ahead and do that.
All right. So initially, you had actually mentioned that our economy is sort of getting used to getting into a recession and coming out of it. So really like us to get into that a bit. So what opportunities come up whenever we are in such a time or when we're approaching such a period, for buyers, for sellers, for investors, for homeowners?
Everybody, basically.
For everybody, basically.
Okay, so The way the real estate market works from an investment time frame perspective or horizon perspective is each sector is in cycles.
Okay.
Or the market itself is in cycles, and these cycles span anything between 3 to 5 years,
Okay.
depending. And you start from the peak where there's a lot of money to go around in the underlying economy. So all assets are seeing income, are seeing rent paid on time and all of that. And then the economy starts to slow. And then as it starts to slow, you find out that the real estate market is no longer in the peak. It starts to go down, down, and then it gets to the full bottom. We like to call it full bottom because at that point, you find asset prices a bit more flexible. People are willing to defer receipt of payment. People are willing to take part payments. People are willing to take structured payments, and it goes on and on. Now, for developers, the opportunity.
Are they also willing to take like price cuts on their assets?
So I've read that in quite a number of publications.
Or is it true?
But where you have strong demand in city centers, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, no developer reduces prices. What they do is they just...
Flexible with the payment terms.
Yes, or they just wait it out. Yes, because here we import 90% of what we use to develop. So you're going to have to redeem those payments. You're going to have to settle those payments. And so what are you cutting down the cost for?
So just wait till the next cycle.
So
I
you will have
find
to...
it interesting every time people say, oh, I know it's so weird because real estate is an asset that the prices never come down. So every time I hear like, oh, when the market bottoms out, the prices will bubble to burst.
I mean, there are instances where certain individuals or certain corporates are willing to, for a guaranteed payment, accept a slightly reduced payment on single assets. But as a general rule for the market, no. What you just find is developers begin to either focus more on their HNI clients, or you find out that they start to change their focus on the kinds of uses that they invest in. I mean, there's no recession in 2016 and 2020 that we've been through, and those that I have read about, that the luxury real estate residential market in Lagos didn't do well. Right? In fact, let me give you something new here. So, as Nigeria was coming out of the recession caused by the pandemic, and we were tracking what global numbers were doing. Do you believe that the market for cruise ships was one of the first to recover from the pandemic?
Of course, yes.
The market for cruise ships,
yes.
That is ships and trips,
yes,
was one of the first to recover. And you're wondering, where is all the money coming from? You see, one of the things about a recession is first of all, psychological, right? So the occupier market is largely hit by the psychological winds occasioned by, but the money is still there. It's just that more people hold on to it, and then they wait until the government or key institutions do a few things before they release the cash. So the opportunities for developers, of course, could be you're changing your uses or you're focusing on HNIs. For construction companies, you can hold on your materials, and then over time you start to invest in, or you start to put those materials towards good use. Something that I have seen some developers do is they have relationships with their suppliers, building materials, and they just say, look, okay, give me enough materials to, because if you track the market well enough, you start to have an idea of what's going on, all right? And your suppliers start to tell you, okay, this is where this market is going. You might want to buy maybe twice or thrice the volume of this material and just hold it. We're hearing a few things. So more developers, more construction contractors are willing to sign those kinds of deals. So when the recession eventually hits, everyone's fine. I mean, occupiers are usually in a difficult position because your money now means or now has less value. So we have seen cases where people relocate to smaller apartments or move further out of town because, you can no longer pay 4.5 or 5.5 and you don't want to take unnecessary loans to augment whatever you have. So you move further away from the city centers, which anyway are sooner or later going to be converted to commercial. So, yeah.
All right. So, some people say that economic downtimes present some very unique opportunities.
People swear that
But
billionaires are made in recession.
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
But some others, at such times, they just freeze. They're not investing in anything. They're not.
They're not buying, they're not
Let's
trading,
just
they're
wait
just-
this thing out.
they're just
Let's
watching.
wait till the end. Who knows whether this will be the last? Maybe from
Hoorah.
here, self, everything will
Yeah,
just
scattered,
scatter.
literally.
Can we not be dramatic, please?
You
No,
say
for
that,
real,
you
for
say
real,
that,
that's-
but there are people who legitimately feel like, come on.
Yeah.
Like think of like COVID now.
Thank
for
you.
example, when the pandemic came, there were people that are like, this is the end. Like Jesus Christ
For
has
real.
come. So they're just like,
Please.
yes, you said this maybe because you do research and you can look back and you feel like maybe
Really?
you do research, so you've tracked
Okay.
it, and you, like, I mean, everyone's like Bill Gates said, well, the pandemic
No,
was
but
coming
we
because
had
we're due
we
one.
had a
Anyway.
Bill Gates. Anyway, we had a pandemic in 1918.
Exactly.
Yes, and the symptoms around national behavior and country perspectives were around the same. But yes, you do have a point in that we didn't know when it was going to end. We weren't sure if the vaccines would work.
Hashtag unprecedented times. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
So, your question, I believe, was there are opportunities in
Opportunities.
downtimes, and how do we
Access.
see
Take
them?
advantage of
Fantastic.
them, yeah.
So, I mean, that brought to my mind the classes or the types of investors. So you have your core investors, and they don't take too much risk, but they want a return. And then you have your core plus investors. They take a bit more risk. I'm being super, not basic, but I'm just trying to move quickly.
Okay.
Then you have your opportunistic investors. Now, those are the people that, like the Palms, that built, ShopRite and all of that in 2005. Yeah, that's the opportunistic class. And then you have the vulture investors. They are a real class of investors. Now, these are the guys who are waiting for someone to get into EFCC, so that when EFCC sees
They'll
the
quickly
property,
buy it.
Yeah.
they will wait for it to get to AMCON.
Then
Then when AMCON brings it out for sale, then
will
they will
auction
go
it,
and
they will
collect
now
it.
go-
Yeah. So there are people like that. Sometimes they just call me, Ayo, is there anything, say, I know what he's asking for. He wants a VGC house that is ordinarily 200 million for 75, because some houses have gone like that. So what you find is core investors, core plus investors during recessions are a bit more cautious. They want to take risks, but they are a bit more defensive in their approach. They take risks, but they play more of a defensive attacker type thing. Sorry to non-soccer people. But when you look at opportunistic investors, they pretty much prepare for times like this. They almost have, just like how you have, like in the last recording you were doing, someone keeping 10%. They also have money they are keeping. So they're not buying all their Shoaibs, they're not changing their cars too frequently, they're not,
They're waiting.
they are just waiting.
They're waiting.
So they are waiting for you to say you want to run for office and you want to sell. They are waiting for recession. They are waiting for all kinds of things. So they just have that money somewhere, usually in a foreign currency or in some instrument that can easily be liquidated. And once recession starts to hit, there are always opportunities, because some people are hit harder than others.
True. Okay.
So some people just need,
Cash
money.
now.
Some people need and all of that, and they just go in and then they take that. So yes, recessions put asset owners in a position to be a bit more flexible, and if they have 10 houses, 15, they can easily let go of 2, 3, and you can easily take that for well below market prices. Yes. So those are, pretty much from an asset acquisition perspective. Again, for developers trying to pitch new projects to investors, this is an opportunity now to sit down and really think through your strategy, look at how the market is going, try and project what the highest and best uses will be, over the next 2 to 3 years, how our user behaviors and changing. And that's where, people like us gets quite a lot of work, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So tell us, you're saying like developers the next 2 to 3 years, what the market is going.
Yeah.
Where's it
Okay.
going?
I usually do this towards the end of the year, but hey, let's take a shot. So the first thing is, as you all know already, this is Mixta. Gated communities are a
All the rage.
leading a leading development class. They emphasize security features, which is critical in Nigeria's cities. Warehousing isn't going away anytime soon. Now, especially if it's grade A warehousing. Now, the trick with that is you have to have partnerships that are willing to sign off and partner with you so that, the cost is spread and then occupation is guaranteed. You have off-takers, at least 40%, 50%. So better still if it's inner city. So if you do have space, it's something you want to think about. Anything from 5,000 square meters, you can just stack it.
Okay.
Or 10,000 square meters if you can get it designed right. Healthcare is one of the most underserved areas right now in Nigeria. Healthcare isn't going away anytime soon. Again, we were reminded of that by COVID, diagnostic centers, cancer screening, oncology and all of that. So healthcare, warehousing, gated communities. Yes, so grade A retail is something of a trick because you want to charge in dollars for international distributors and retailers, but you earn income in Naira, so already you're on the back foot. So what you want to do is do a mixed-use development, and so you shock your grade A asset with a bit of residential, a bit of office, play areas, and these are general statements. Depending on the area, I would have to do a bit of detail assessment, but that's what I think developers are going to be doing in the next 2 to 3 years. If you don't want too much trouble and you're developing in Nigeria, just go into residential. Don't stress yourself.
Don't stress yourself.
But if what you're thinking about is high yield, high returns, then you are now spending time discussing, assessing, reviewing warehousing, healthcare. Because healthcare demand is really high in Nigeria. We all know Evercare in
Well, you know what I find so
and then student housing. Yes, please. Student housing.
There's no space.
Where?
In if you say you want to put a hostel, are you going to put it inside like you want with Evercare?
So what I have found is this: the demand for healthcare is so strong, and the need itself is you're not going to watch John Wick 4.
Yeah,
you're not going to buy ice cream. It's healthcare. It's life or death. So you find that people are willing to cover distances. They can travel. They can drive. What we have to focus on is the quality of the assets, the partnerships, and the maintenance, and of course the services on offer. Once you have those, and then of course you build on that, you find out that healthcare can really be a strong revenue earner. We don't need to really go too deep into what happened during COVID, but most of the hospitals that I know of, and I know quite a few, were stacked. They were stacked. That's in Lagos, that's in Ogun State, most of Abuja, most of Port Harcourt, most of Ibadan, the major strong enough hospitals.
Could it be, is it possible that the healthcare side of real estate is underserved because first of all, how many Nigerians can really afford
I was going to say the people
a
that can
place
afford
like
will just fly
Evercare?
out.
And again, with hospitals, right? I live in Ajah. I live in Ajah right now.
It's true now.
I live in Ajah right now.
You're going to hear what I'm going to say next.
But my son's hospital is in VI here.
Yes.
Do you understand? Yeah. So for the most part, people who can afford it can cover distances, like you said, but they go to verified hospitals with track records of successful operations or whatever. Right? So for people who are looking to come in, and we don't see a lot of franchises, within the healthcare space like that. So I can't take advantage of Evercare's existing reputation in the market.
And
go and build one in Awuyaya or
That's
something.
a very strong point.
So
except
how then?
I'm not going to use my land.
Yeah, how then?
Can I?
Yes,
go ahead.
You can.
So annual healthcare tourism by Nigeria is, last I checked, $1.8 billion.
Okay.
That means, let me try and flesh it out a bit. That means that Nigerians as a people have $1.8 billion to spend on healthcare. To treat themselves?
Okay.
That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, who can guess where $850 million, I think my numbers are right. Yes.
India.
India, thank you very much. It's not Europe, it's not the US, it's India. Now, what you find is when you look at the Indian healthcare system, it's one of the most well managed, but it's easy to replicate. So I guess the question we should ask ourselves is, are we saying, and it's a big problem if the answer is in the negative, that we cannot ensure that even if it's $100 million, we cannot ensure that it stays in Nigeria. And the 1.8 billion annual is just by official expenditure and documentation. It's probably more than that. So we have the money to spend. That leads us to the next point. Now, there is a way that expenditure and income and revenue can be done. That once we are able to attract that amount of money into the country, out of the profit, then you find that, because hospitals use a lot, you can now subsidize a few procedures, you can open inner city clinics, you can open rural clinics, you can partner with NGOs and governments because you've made enough money from your private clients, and then you can now subsidize that.
In fact, some other thing from the case study about India, it just struck me that I think they do a lot of, they are very specialized. So someone needs to undergo a major cancer operation. They tell you, it has to be there.
No, it's affordable. Because guess what? They are doing it in
they are
doing it in London. Anything they're doing in America. It's just twice the price.
So the thing with India is India has had to, how do I put it down? They've had to get really good at whatever they put their hands on. So India now is, last month was has overtaken China as the most populous country in the world. It's 1.4 billion thereabout, and their last election voting was around 800 million. And there are quite a number of things not working in India, but then there are a number of things that work really well. And the thing with the country is they know the role of healthcare, they know what it means, they know the value, they know the amount of revenue. And if you ever have time, you can take a look at their healthcare assets, healthcare investments, and you will see what they've put in. But yes, they have treatment across the spectrum. They have, the low end, not too good, and then they have really specialized healthcare, and that's what they've been able to do. They just, when you look at India, what people tell you is, okay, their IT is strong, and then they give you examples of Sundar Pichai and all the other big giants. Satya Nadella, all those people, and some microsystems. His daughter, I think, is married to the Prime Minister of the UK. So they give you all those examples. So your mind is looking at IT, but when you sit and look at their healthcare, they're not struggling.
No,
they're not struggling. So they've done a lot, and I also heard that they have some of their leading doctors and healthcare professionals partnering with organizations in Nigeria. The only thing is our hospitals here are not
infrastructure-wise.
Infrastructure is an issue.
It's iffy.
Iffy is a very nice way of putting it.
It is.
It's iffy. I've heard all sorts about healthcare, but yeah, it's iffy.
It is iffy. That's the term.
So my next question to you would be, so for people with quite a number of assets in real estate, is there a way to sort of hedge your assets against
recession?
Not exactly against recession, but is there a way to protect yourself when we approach such a time so that your yields don't drop so much that it affects your lifestyle, and maybe other attendant realities around you?
One of the beauties about property is it's a store of value. And once you've built it, once it's up and running and it's to a certain standard, then there's a few things you can do. For example, you will notice that landlords or landowners don't usually, for residential anyway, they're not too slow when it comes to increasing their rents, right? Yes.
They are not too slow.
So what you find is once the recession starts to hit, that is one way that they
hedge quickly.
They hedge. Okay. Because already the asset is there, it's stored. Value is not going away. There's no force majeure tearing it down, so they can move that up. Now, it gets a bit tricky when you get into commercial assets, right? Because if you move your rents a bit too much,
lose them.
You will lose them, and it will be obvious. And you see, once a commercial building is too empty for too long, the culture even starts to play a role in that. People start to say, "What is wrong with that?"
Yeah,
building?"
why
like
is it
people are not
still-
succeeding there.
That's why they are moving out. But it's true now. Business will move in 6 months. They move that. They don't know it's rent.
Yeah.
They will say, the owner of the building.
So you find out that there's not as much flexibility on rent, but the asset is still a good asset. Then you can also think of adjusting the use a bit. So you add a bit more entertainment in some buildings. In some buildings, you reduce the amount of space that you have available for rent.
When you say entertainment, what do you mean?
Oh, okay. So let me give an example. So there was a building in Marina. Let's just say it's above 10 floors, because if I call the number now, everybody will know. Okay. It's above 10 floors. And so what they did was, it was first of all an office the entire time. But during COVID, and us not knowing when COVID will end, they changed part of it into residential. And they changed one floor into entertainment. It was kind of like a lounge, bar, karaoke, all of that. And and they ran it for a while. And it wasn't
To make
bad.
people want to even come to the building.
Yes, I mean, and again, because you couldn't even
come to Marina, do karaoke.
No.
Sorry, but it just
No. It's a strong point, because again, that's the thing about advisors. This is the kind of things we have to deal with, in that it's a very strong point you've raised. But I think of the last 5 projects that advisory projects we've had to do, I think the last 3 have been around Marina. Because if you look at what's going on in Marina, let us leave the large, the high buildings. Let's look at the smaller ones. You're finding quite a bit of conversion. You're finding redevelopment, and then the Lagos Blue Rail Line. We'll discuss that. Okay. Is we can discuss it now. Is coming through, and it should go live soon. Marina is a station, and that of course will drive demand. And demand, of course, will lead to change in use, like we saw in Lekki Phase 1. And that, of course, will bring more life into Marina. I do agree that there are security challenges with Marina, but
significantly so.
Those are things that can easily be dealt with. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You seem so confident.
Data makes you confident, really.
It's not just data. When you talk about things like security challenges around a space like Marina,
the reason is this. So I know what places like, and I'm not in any way making any comparison, but it's just a precursor to what I'm trying to say. I remember what Oshodi
used to be like.
Was like. I mean, I remember what Obalende used to be like.
Fair.
And I mean, I know Marina is a special case, but once investors know that there is a clear path and a time frame to achieving yields above 4, 5, 6%, and there's strong government backing, forget it. It will be done.
Okay, we're here.
It will be done.
And I mean, for the Oshodi and everything, Marina is really not as...
No, Marina is a different kettle of fish. It's because it's mixed use.
Yes.
That's very Marina.
I'd say the biggest security threat is the fact that it's the market that's close to it. Other than that, I don't see any serious security challenge. Really. For me, my concern is more around the market, because the market attracts all kinds of people, right? And then there are some small hotels.
Residential isn't present and obvious in Marina. I think that's a problem. If somehow we were able to create maybe 6,000 square meters, gated community style, but that's a lot of leveling.
How are you going to settle all those people?
It's a lot of compensation. It's a lot of relocation. But and this is where the 1004 example comes in. And, we were having that conversation, before we started. 1004 used to be federal government housing for staff and all of that. And, I was there when they did the relocations. Oh, okay. It wasn't fun, but I was there and I saw it. And I know that if they use that, they shouldn't. use that template. But my knowing that template is available is part of where my confidence is from, right?
Okay.
So you have a safe place where you can take the residents to, and that should be followed to the letter. You can just take them there and create a good place for them, and depending on what the stakeholders agree to, you can make it work.
Okay.
So
Great.
back to the issues on, back to my question on recession. So
Yes.
when you're taking advantage of opportunities that come up, then
Yes.
right, there's also there's a knowing as well that things will not always remain like
be
this.
like this.
Some things happen and we're here, but everybody, government,
They are working
private sector,
towards
everybody's working to
course
get us
correcting.
out of
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you take advantage of the challenge, the opportunities that come up then? You know, without setting yourself up for
being cut down
for newer challenges when the economy recovers.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first thing you want to do is be cautious when it comes to the kinds of opportunities you take in the first place.
Okay.
Yes, and I have an example. So we did have a client who had a project that he wanted to do, and we felt this was the way they should have gone. They felt otherwise, got into trouble, came back 3 years later, and we are back to it again. Now, there will be quite a number of opportunities in every recession. Now, what you want to do is ask yourself, the typical framework is this in line with the client portfolio objectives? Is this the right time horizon? Are the right parameters in check? What are the macroeconomic variables? And so on and so forth. But what you want to ask yourself is, what's the amount of complexity I'm getting into? All right. And you want to avoid that. What I found that works is the simpler the opportunity, the more straightforward the opportunity, at least in the short term, the more likely it is to be a good opportunity. And so you take that. Once you see that the economy in general is improving, it then means that people start to make careless errors.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you still wait, and then you allow that tide over. And then after that, you can now start to, take out more risk. But once you start finding excess in the system, know that a correction is
coming.
usually, yeah. So once you start finding people, doing things like, 8-room apartments, building all kinds of things. There are things we look at. I'm just trying to, Once you start to see that, know that we are getting to a point where, a recession or some correction is coming. So you want to be very objective about the opportunities you take. You want to, especially in the recession, you want to be a bit cautious. And of course, you need to reach out to your advisors. There are different advisors out there. You can reach out to me, but there are others out there.
We'll reach out to you.
You need to reach out. No, because, I wasn't this confident about a decade ago, because nobody listened to advisors then. They're saying, what do you know? How much do you have? What school did you go to? And all of that. But now, where people have seen that there's value in what we do, it does make sense. So, yeah.
All right. So speaking about cycles in real estate, this is just before we wrap up.
Okay.
You talked to us through the different cycles, right? So which cycle is a buyer's market? Like which cycle favors buyers and which cycle favors sellers?
Oh, the down market favors the buyer. No?
The down markets.
Yes, the down economic. Yeah.
Okay.
So what that means is when the economy is bad, when it's really bad, that's when you should be buying.
Okay.
Yes. And then you sell when the economy is doing really well,
But
because people have money to buy.
Take it off.
And then when they buy from you, you keep aside a few coins, as we say,
wait
and
again.
then you wait again. Because
You
the
said
down
something
period
about
always comes.
complexities in the transactions,
Yes.
the opportunities. What sort of complexities are you
Number one, too many parties.
Okay. So
in
like you want to buy a
transaction.
house, 5 people own the house. No.
Too many people, and then of course, if it's property and land, then the legal title is the first thing.
Okay.
Once the title is too complex, that's even the standard for any transaction. The payment systems models, too many parties, that's also a problem.
As in you split the payment to 5 people.
No, you have too many recipients
Of the money.
of the payments, because it means there are a number of interests.
Okay.
Yes, and then that's really what comes to mind.
So if you're looking to make or take attempt of any opportunities that have come up now that maybe
In the
you feel like the
recession,
businesses, the
you-
economy is slowing down because of elections,
it
someone's
has to
trying to
be
flog
simple.
something.
Yeah.
Very careful.
Now, if you want to take the big opportunities, then you need to go with your own army of professionals, consultants. You have everybody looking at
Lawyers,
it.
everybody
So that
looking-
way you have people who see through different lenses and they see
Okay.
different angles of the transaction.
Okay, so aside, of course, the number of parties in the transaction, aside the problem with land title, what other sort of complexities should people look out for?
I mean, it's that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
That's the biggest red flag, Abby.
I mean, it's not the biggest, but each transaction is unique. Sometimes, like quite a number of transactions we have, when the deal gets to our table, it has a history. So you have to look into the history and you ask yourself, why did this
thing work out?
Yeah,
I have a very
exactly,
good
yeah.
example.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's say I am a bank in the US or in the UK called to join the consortium that is building the Fourth Mainland Bridge.
Okay,
One of the first questions I'll ask is, okay, the last consortium
what happened?
that had solid powers, not players or powers, what happened to them?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I would look at, because it's a unique element of that transaction. And so I
Sure.
would go through the documentation, go through the system, and then I understand, okay, this is the Nigerian government. I mean, Mixta is Africa-wide, right? So the way your Senegalese government would behave would be different from
From
the way
how
the
the-
Nigerian
Yeah.
has. So
This is true.
which government are we talking about here? Fourth Mainland Bridge, which government? Lagos, which party? Which state? Oh, okay. The last people that were there, what happened to them? Bank of America, JP Morgan, all of them, they left. Okay. All of that I would put into my framework and come up with a decision. So there's also the genealogy of
The transaction. Okay, great. That's really good to know.
I mean, you're definitely someone to.
We should
definitely
sit at his
every.
feet. I've been
I mean, we
learning
should-
because it's a very
honestly-
insightful conversation. I
honestly,
really
thank
enjoyed
you.
this
I've learned so
conversation
much. I've learned so
because
much.
I feel like a lot of people, and maybe our listeners, I feel like our listeners might not be at the place where they're going to start developing, but now we're seeing situations people are beginning to pull money together and they want to make investments. A lot of people they played in the money market a bit and they feel they want to go into real estate. So like early 30s, mid 30s, early 40s, like okay, I'm thinking of owning a home. I'm thinking of buying a home. Like how do we step? I don't want to lose money.
Oh, that's arguably one of the easier questions you have asked me today.
Okay.
It's you always start with land. It's
Land,
because land does a number of things.
Step one, buy land.
It brings you into the discipline of how property transactions work.
Okay.
They are not always cut and, in fact, they are rarely cut
Cut
and
and-
dried. You have to be familiar with the regulator. You have to know how the process works. You have to know the value of money, payment terms. You have to know, very importantly, how to keep your passions down when you think you have seen a good deal. For example, a friend of mine calls me to do a training, big-time banker, top 4 international banks in the country. And he says, okay, what do I think about this deal? I say, give me a week. Let me talk to my lawyers, talk to my people, and hear what they have to say. And then he calls me 3 days later and says he has spent money on it. I said, wow, okay, be good to you. And then I move on. And then a month later, I see a missed call. I say, a month. It took you that long? Okay. So, and of course, as projected, he had been, what's the word we use now?
Swindled.
Okay, so he had, and it's a common thing, sadly. You see a good deal, you think it's a good deal. If you don't buy this land, you won't buy it again.
So if it's too good to be true, usually it is.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it. I think the other way of looking at it is just give it some time, right? Just, I hear people say, buy land, you're not making any more of it. I mean, what if you are buying a court case? I mean, I have friends who are looking at property cases 20 years. In fact, they handed over the file to them.
Wow.
So you have to look at land as, am I buying a court case or not? Or am I buying a future investment for my children that I can use to pay their school fees in Harvard or something? And so on and so forth. So I would recommend you start with land. It does take you through the rudiments. It does give you an idea. And you see and hear the kinds of mistakes that people make. And again, this is funny, but our people have a sense of pride. It's less embarrassing. For example, if I say I bought land give me a far-flung location.
Ekpe.
It's not far-flung, but I'll go with you.
Okay.
No, I won't go with you.
Okay.
If you say you bought land in Ekpe, they'll say, give me high five.
Give me 5.
You're an investor. Now, if you say you bought a 3-bedroom house in Ekpe, you're like,
To do what?
except it's the one that Mixta did. I was like,
First of all, I just need to say that Lagos New Town is not Ekpe.
I watched the
Mixta
video
has-
again this morning. It was solid.
Thank you.
YouTube.
Thank you.
Thank
Solid.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So don't be saying things like except one is Mixta. Don't be trying to be funny because you know it's not true.
No, but it's true now. That's what I was saying now. Except Mixta's own. The other ones I don't know.
It was sounding a bit sarcastic.
No, I
but
can't be now. Come
Mixta
on.
stuff is good.
Your boss is my come on.
Okay, good.
Now, so if you say you bought land in Ekpe, people are like, yeah, you're an investor. Oh yeah, take high five. Now, if you say you bought a 5-bedroom house and it's not in New Lagos,
Okay.
it's outside, people will be like, they'll start asking you all
Are
kinds
you
of
from
questions.
there? Is it a family
Was it
home?
10 million? Who is the person?
Yeah,
Who is it this? Who is it that? So that also plays because people want to say their own things, but it's all part of just being a starter, a beginner in the process. So you buy your first plot of land, you put money together, then you learn the power of cooperatives, groups, pulling money together, and then you start to build your own network. I saw one land somewhere. Do you have 100K? Let's put 200K, 300K, and then you start to build like that. Then you now make the leap into buying houses. What it is a leap. Buying a house and buying land are two different things. So that's where you start.
Okay, great. So if you're listening and you want to jump into the real estate market, you heard from the genius, you heard from the
expert
veterans
himself.
They've said that you people should start with land. And I think that makes sense because it's sort of like low stakes.
Yeah, exactly.
With all the condiments that would be in any other real estate transaction.
Yeah, it helps you understand things
Yeah,
you
and
need
a
to
base
know.
level.
You
I
just
need
go
to-
through the process.
Yeah.
So the lawyer says there's something wrong with the title. You ask
You
him
know.
What is
You
it?
send it to a second lawyer. You say, okay, this is what's going on. You go and see the site. You see water here. You ask what's going on.
Yeah.
You see, I mean, it's land, so nobody expects you to perform wonders. It's land, so you ask questions. You're familiar. You see trucks moving around. Why are these trucks moving around? Why did someone build in here? And you learn yourself. And then
Okay.
after a while, yeah.
All right, so I think that's very key. So I really like that you said that because I feel like every time we do this podcast or we do like the episodes, we really want our listeners to take something away.
Yeah.
So I think we've taken a lot away, but it's just
definitely
great
have.
that
We
a lot of people
definitely
have seen like the first step on the stairway or like the first rung on the ladder is if you want to enter the market, you should start with land.
I think
It's-
many people already do that, but they don't exactly say like this is the way
Yes,
to
there's
go.
no clear path now.
Yeah, there's no
so it's just
clear
like,
path.
okay, I'm investing. My people say
Yeah.
we should put money together. But I mean,
Yeah.
you spelled it out. So, okay, if you do land, then you do like a pool, then you can now say, okay, you want to take the leap into, and don't be in a hurry. As you said, be patient. If a
And some
deal
of the
is-
land plots you buy today, you are selling them in 3 years anyway.
True.
You're not going to hold them forever. And it's just understanding how the process works.
Works.
And again, maybe because of the marketing, out there, one is tempted to believe that property transactions can go on and be completed in a year. You can make
Yeah.
20, 50,
Yes.
80%
Yeah.
profits in 6 weeks and all of that jazz. But when you sit down and think about it, it's really... You see, when we're talking about property investments, it's one of the longest lasting investments. I mean, over 80% of the world's wealth is held in real estate.
Real
I mean,
estate,
it's a
okay.
fact, right? And the total value for real estate transactions as of last year is over $6 trillion, right? So it's a lot. And it's not... I know we romanticize it a bit, and it's good to do that to an extent, but it's really what people use, and it's what you build your future on. So you can as
okay.
well just give it the attention it deserves.
Okay, that's good. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
All right,
A
thank you
lot-
so
a
much.
lot to
so
unpack
much.
today.
I
Yeah.
I really like this episode. I think
Ayo
it's
is loaded.
I don't
Ayo
want to
is
say this
loaded.
like my best because I'm all of them are best. No,
But I don't say
my
that
guests-
too. Your other guests will not come.
Guess
Ayo
what?
is
All my
loaded.
guests are my best, but
Uh-huh. You better
I
say
really
it.
like this episode because I
Thank
feel
you.
like so many things, especially if you live in Lagos, if you're interested in the real estate market, if you feel like, I don't want to read a report.
Yeah.
Right, so it's like very high level, like an overview. So if
exactly.
you then pick up a report later on, you kind of
You
have a
can now
general
start to-
idea
Yeah.
of if you
And
want to sink your teeth into like some more meaty information about it. But this is a really good. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people will refer this episode for like beginners in the real estate,
Click
people
like
that
and
want to do
subscribe and-
and all that jazz. But
Exactly.
yeah, a lot
And
of
I
people
think it
that
appeals to a large
range. So it's really
audience.
it's been really good. You've been
know.
a fantastic guest. Thank you. We can't thank you enough. Thank you so
You really
much.
can't.
To our listeners at home, thank you for rocking with us. Till
Thank you,
next
guys.
time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.